Hi, I'm Scott LaMorte from Itasca Bank and Trust Company, your local bank with big shoulders. Together, we've been shaping the future since 1948, but we're just getting started. We take pride that businesses and individuals like you know us for our high level of customer service, financial strength, and up-to-date technology. What we really want to be known for is our connection to the community. Itasca Bank and Trust Company may have a big bank ability, but we know what matters most: people. Join us as we invite members of the community to the table and have conversations as neighbors. Hi, I'm Scott LaMorte from Itasca Bank and Trust Company. Welcome to the Itasca Bank and Trust Insights Podcast, where we hope to give you some insights into our customers and the communities that we serve as we strive to become Chicago's best community bank. We got a full house today and we have a great topic, so thank you everyone for being here. With me today, I have Dawn Smith from the College of DuPage. I have Amanda Hausman from the Village of Roselle. And I have Geoff Bevington from Custom Direct. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
We very much appreciate it. We've got something really cool going on, and we're going to try to get into a little bit about what we're talking about, how we got to where we are today, and what we've got coming up moving forward. Everybody ready to go?
Ready?
Okay. So I like to do a little get to know you as we get going so that our audience has an understanding of who we're dealing with. So I think I'm going to start with Dawn. You okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Dawn, you work at the College of DuPage, and you work at the MAC, which I'm not going to try to say because I butcher it all the time. So, what is the MAC?
So the Mcaninch Art Center is part of College of DuPage, and there is 3 theaters, an art museum, a professional ensemble. We do all of the collegiate arts with theater and music and dance. And it's also just a hub for the community for fine performance art.
And a couple of years ago, the MAC had a very successful, COD I should say, had a very successful run with a Frida Kahlo exhibit.
Yes.
And that leads us to where we're going now, which is an Andy Warhol project, right?
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly.
So now I'm going to pivot for a second, and I'm going to go to Geoff. So Geoff, you are an artist, a businessman, an entrepreneur, an all-around heck of a guy.
Thanks.
How do you fit into this equation?
Well, I live in Glen Ellen. I've lived there for 29 years, so I'm a newcomer, and based on everyone else who lives there. And 2 years ago, I approached Diana Martinez from the MAC and suggested that I paint a mural of Frida Kahlo on the outside of one of the buildings in celebration and maybe to generate some interest. That snowballed into a lot of different things, which begat, right now, the Warhol project. And I think I'm just finishing up, if Dawn's counting, 72 different portraits of folks across DuPage County.
And we're going to get into that a little bit more as we move through. Before we move on, Geoff, though, you have done some other projects for Itasca Bank and Trust, have you not?
Yes.
Anything recently?
Yeah, we did the wine labels for your 75th anniversary, some incredible wine from Linford Winery. And I've been working with Ginny and Diane Middlebrooks for quite some time on a lot of your marketing projects.
Love it. So that leaves us with Amanda.
I just want to say I didn't know you did the Freedom mural. I loved that. That was amazing. I've got a picture with my sister in front of it that my daughter took. It was her first picture of us. I'm Amanda.
So, Amanda, you're with the Village of Roselle.
I'm with the Village. I'm the Village Clerk, and I'm also on the board for the Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation.
Tell us what that is.
The Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation is a 501c3 charitable organization in Roselle dedicated to bringing more public art and cultural events to the community. It was founded pretty recently in 2021 by 2 Roselle Sister Cities German Committee members, Laura Truskin and Karen Ostrander, in the throes of the pandemic, they say. And they just wanted to be able to bring more vibrancy and togetherness to the community, especially after COVID and all the separation and the siloing of our people. But we were invited to the Warhol breakfast, I'll call it, right? Mm-hmm. By the COD, the MAC, and the Cleve Carney Museum of Art to understand the economic benefits that it had for that area when they had Frida come and what it could do for the rest of DuPage if we started to promote Warhol in our communities and brought a little bit of that life into our own town.
It's a well-done elevator pitch right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Got it.
If I didn't know, I think you were practicing. before we go on, I'm just out of curiosity. Did any of you have the pleasure of knowing Cleve Carney?
No.
No.
I did. Cleve Carney, wonderful
Really?
human being, an absolute card. Guy was a riot to be around and loved art more than anyone in DuPage County that I've ever met. He was
Wow.
a wonderful person. It's befitting that his name is on a museum there.
Oh, so nice.
I love that. It makes me feel good. So I just want to give a little bit of factual background on the actual exhibit and what the works in the exhibit are going to be. So I'm just going to read this really quick. Following up, like we said, off the Frida Kahlo exhibit, we've now got an exhibition featuring 94 works from the Andy Warhol portfolio's A Life in Pop, works from the Bank of America collection that is on loan from the Bank of America through their Art in Our Communities program. So this exhibition with Andy Warhol will include over 100 works from the COD Permanent Art Collection. Am I getting that all right?
You
It's an
are.
awful lot going on there, right? So we've got a lot of pieces of Warhol coming into our community. And it's bigger than just what's at COD, which is why we're here today, right? So there's a Roselle piece, and the bank is a little bit involved in that. So we're going to get into that as well. I do want to mention this is an interesting moment for me personally. Last year, I went to the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh, which I didn't know existed till I was in Pittsburgh, and I went, oh, look at that. So it's funny for me that I was able to go through. It's a multi-storied museum and see a lot of his works, paintings, photographs, a lot of stuff. So this is fascinating to me. So tell us a little bit maybe about what's in that collection that we're going to see.
Yeah, so there are lots of different elements within this exhibit, and one thing I want everyone to know that outside of just a standard art exhibit that will have paintings on the wall, this will be a lot more interactive and a lot more in-depth of Andy Warhol itself. We'll have a historical exhibit that will go through periods of his life. There is what I think is going to be so fun, a Studio 54 exhibit where there'll be video of actual footage at Studio 54.
Scares me just a little bit.
Simultaneously with costumes of famous people that wore those costumes, at that location. So that's going to be really dynamite. We'll have another area where we have those photographs, and a lot of those are the Polaroids that are famous. And he used a lot of those for his screening afterwards. There's also the silver clouds installation. So what that is these like big silver, almost tinfoily looking clouds that are half inflated almost, and you kind of like bounce them around a little bit. So that's really fun. The back we're going to make into a Central Park area. So it will be, we'll have a whole bunch of like the light poles, the benches, the backdrop of the buildings, just like if you were in Central Park. And on the weekends, we even have food trucks coming, so it's just going to be really exciting. And we have a kids area, so this actually is fully family and run, and we have a local artist, Mcaninch, who's created a Warhol coloring book and active things for the little ones and stuff like that.
So we're going to need a lot of yellow, red, and blue is what I'm hearing here. If we're going to do this right?
Exactly. So, no, there's just a lot going on. And not only that, but with the gallery itself, when we had Frida Kahlo a couple years ago, they expanded the Cleve Carney Museum to make it available for world-class art, so the humidity and the security was all available so we can have this amazing, really world-class art in DuPage County. So that's really fascinating. And it's the best of all of his artwork. So it's not just one genre. It's a little bit of the soup cans and the portraits and the sunsets and the flowers and endangered animals. And so it will be really, really exciting.
So this is, like we said earlier, not just a COD campus project. This is
Yes.
sort of county-wide. So, Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about how things are going off the COD campus and what role you've been in?
Yeah, when this first started and I heard that Andy Warhol was coming to COD, what struck me first was his quote that in the future we will all be famous for 15 minutes. And so I started thinking about how would that apply to anything that I might suggest to Diana and Dawn. And so I created the artwork for 4 people from Glen Ellen. Laurie Anderson, Jeffrey Deaver, Catherine Dunham, and Sean Hayes. So those are people from Glen Ellen, and they're famous, some more so than others. Poor Geoffrey Deaver. He should be famous. But so Don and Diana took that and said, this is really something. We can take this and turn it into a program wherein we involve as many different towns as possible, and each town starts to think about who would they like to feature, whether they're notable or heroes or famous or not famous. And that has grown into a tremendous project, the Pop Art Project, where I think I'm finishing up 72 different portraits. So each town, including Roselle, is nominated 4 individuals and given me photos, and I've turned them into Warhol-style portraits.
So these are 72 people of prominence in the DuPage citizenry? Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, 72 people who, it depends on prominence or even being famous is in the eye of the beholder, but everybody who is featured is going to be famous. I mean, in West Chicago, everybody who's featured has been deceased for about 120 years. But it's pretty interesting, some of the people. In Lisle, you've got Joy Morton from Morton Arboretum and Morton Salt. And then you've got Coach Nally for Lisle, who I think he recently passed away, but I mean, people know him and love him, and he was just renowned for doing a ton of things, and I guess there's a foundation named after him. So, and then throughout DuPage County, there's all kinds of interesting people that have been nominated.
And every community has its heroes, right? And then to your point, like everybody's beloved in their own way in their own community, right? And that sort of brings us into the little hamlet of Roselle, tucked away on the corner of the county, sleepy as we are, right? The 4 folks who were chosen for Roselle, I thought were just fascinating. And I have names and a little bit of bios, but I'm going to let you do the honors of giving some explanation. But the 4 represented for Roselle are Joe Devlin, who's a longtime trustee and former mayor, Vicki Johnson, who runs the Roselle Community Food Pantry, Fred Kohler was the founder of Linford Winery. Most people don't know, they think Linford is a last name. Linford is the mashing of Lynn and Fred, husband and wife, put together as Linford, right? So we reference Linford on this podcast from time to time, so it's always good to do that. And the 4th is Mary Ann Greigel, who is an absolute civic beast in the community.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, almost too hard to explain. I can't even take credit for that. That was actually given to me by a Rosellian who said, oh, Mary Ann's a beast. And I'm like, in the most positive way. If you need to get something done in Roselle,
Beast
Mary
mode.
Ann's who you want to talk to, right? So tell us a little bit about how that process took place. How did we get to those 4?
So that was a process. I think by the end of last year, we were circulating that this was going to happen. We were going to nominate Rosellians to become pop art famous. And we knew other towns, like Glen Ellen, had picked, go to Wikipedia, see who was super duper famous, pick them. And we do have a few of those in Roselle. But I think because this is a nonprofit organization that's really drawn to accessibility and togetherness, we wanted to get community input. And so we let the people decide. They were able to nominate whomever they thought was worthy of this accolade, and the board took that, and it was a lot of deliberation. We're very lucky in Roselle. We have a lot of people that deserve to be up there. And I was actually surprised to see how many young, and maybe I'll say under 40s people that were nominated as well. We have a very active volunteer community, everywhere from longtime residents to fresh blood. And I think at the end of the day, when we made these final decisions, it was this is a no-brainer. When we released the 4 to the village, they said, absolutely, those are the 4. Let's do this recognition. I think, though, we do have plans to, at some point, maybe acknowledge a few more from the list just because we had such a good group, or maybe do something similar in the future where we can really show how our community volunteers and people that are so dedicated to the town showcase them.
So I'm going to go back to Jeff for just a second. So we've got all these villages and towns participating. How are most of these towns displaying their chosen citizens? Who wants to take that one?
Well, maybe Dawn could fill in, but it's all over the place. I would have to say that the first display I've really seen, of course, other than Glen Ellen's, which is downtown, right where they're doing a lot of construction, but it's on a nice building in a lot of traffic area. But Roselle, putting it on the corner of Irving Park Road and Roselle Road on the bank building is just fantastic. And there are communities like Glendale Heights that are going to be displaying it inside in their senior citizen center. So that's kind of funny because they'll have Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins featured
Of course.
In the senior citizen center because we're all
If it wasn't Billy Corgan, they would have revolted.
right. So, and I just want to say, echo what Amanda was saying. Every town did this in their own way. And when I first picked the 4 people, it really wasn't Wikipedia, but it was me trying to find people that would represent at least the ethos of Andy Warhol saying, you're famous, or at least generally famous for 15 minutes. But all these other towns picked people that are really deserving of fame. Some already are famous. Dawn, where are some of the other towns going to be doing or displaying their...
So a lot of my main contacts were municipalities. And so with the municipality and it going through many different tax buying, corporations, together, we're doing a lot of libraries, a lot of civic centers, a lot of senior centers, that sort of thing. Something that is public and, highly visible in larger windows and locations where it would have a higher pedestrian vehicular traffic type of things. But I do have to say, again, to echo everybody else, is the personal thing I really love about this project is that it does bring a lot of civic pride to each community. It's not really just about the exhibit. My previous life was a chamber director, and so when I was the chamber director with Frida, we had the whole town come together. So it's not necessarily just about the economic impact of the restaurants and the businesses, which is fantastic, but the community itself is embracing it and getting around it. And not only that, from what I'm seeing with this project going into all these different communities, that these committees are forming of all of these different locations together for the first time. So after Warhol's gone, they're going to have this relationship to keep this community going within their village to go for the next project and the next project. And just the symmetry of it all is just lovely to see.
So talk a little bit more about economic impact, because you probably have some base knowledge off of what happened when you did the Kahlo exhibit, right? So is the Warhol exhibit expected to be similar?
We really hope so. So with Frida Kahlo, it actually delayed it a year because of COVID. And so we had a little bit even more time to, deal with the marketing and then trying to replan everything. And I wasn't there at the time. That's when I was the chamber director. But it had over 100,000 visitors from every state in 43 different countries. So that was really exciting. And so we're hoping that all those people will come again for Warhol. And it had $9 million of economic impact within DuPage County for this exhibit alone. And the exhibit is over the summer. It's June 3rd through September 10th. So with the pandemic behind us, knock on this wood table, we're hoping for it to be bigger and better, and we're just really excited for everyone to really embrace it.
So Jeff, I'm curious, prior to this, had you ever Warholized anything before?
No, I had.
First time?
Yeah, it was the first time. Yeah.
What goes into Warholizing? How does that work?
Well,
from the artist's perspective?
For the most part, Andy's work was done in silkscreen, so he would just take photos, whether it was the Polaroids or otherwise, and then he would basically posterize, and that's a filter you can use in Photoshop, but it's not as easy as just pushing a button. But he would turn the images into really stark black and white portions with shadows, and then he would just drop color on top of them. The images that you see or will be seeing for most of these pop art portraits are of a particular style, but Andy Warhol has so much more in terms of styles. I mean, he did a whole range of famous women, Candace Bergen, Queen Elizabeth, of course, Marilyn Monroe, and he did very different things with those, the endangered species. So the Warholized is to try to take these folks, turn them into really stark black and white images, and then drop big, bold colors on top of it. So
I'm going to go back to the Rosellians for a minute, since we didn't get too deep in there. Tell us about the 4 Rosellians, what you know about them, what others have told you about them, what What is the sentiment on the street in Roselle that you're picking up when people hear about this? Because I know it was sort of, just so everyone knows, it was sort of launched one at a time. It wasn't like, hey, here's what we're doing. It was kind of like, hey, guess what? Here's the first one. It was feeding kernels, right? So
Yes.
now it's all out there and open to the public and people can see it. So
I was excited that we had ultimately decided to do it that way, where every person got their 15 minutes of fame. And, obviously, I don't know Joe and Fred very well, but I do know Vicky and Marianne. And I think everyone that's in the regular 200-person volunteer community in Roselle knows both of them very well. And I think that they're, perfect recipients for this. Everyone knows Linford far and wide.
So I had read something on the internet, so I know it's true because it came from the internet.
Of course.
That said that Fred put the town of Roselle on the map.
That's the phrase. That is definitely what everyone says. My husband was born here, Park Ridge, but has lived in Roselle his whole life. And when I was letting him know the four, he said, "Oh, Fred Kohler," but he knew Linford, obviously. He said, "Oh yeah, they put Roselle on the map. They should be on there." And then the only other one that he absolutely knew, Mayor Joe Devlin. He is the man, apparently, for all of time, and we're
He
glad
served
to
8
have
years
him
as
here.
mayor and 32 years on the village
Yeah,
board. And
but-
that is a
but
lifetime to be
beloved.
on a village
Yeah.
board.
And you don't always
Yeah.
see that all the time in politics, that everyone feels this warm sentiment.
Correct.
But that's long lasting.
I always say the minute you get involved in local politics, 49% of the town hate you, somewhere between 49 and 51. Right? So, testament to the work that Joe did all those years, that everybody
Yes.
loves him. He's a beloved figure, and you bring the name up, and everyone nods. Like, oh, yeah, Mayor Joe. So I get it. Vicki Johnson is a powerhouse.
Yes.
Our bank this year has been working with a bunch of food pantry partners around the area. Roselle is one of them. We've been helping Vicki with some volunteer efforts and food drives and things. And, that's another, to me, obvious choice, right?
I love that
Loved
you
it.
guys are doing that.
The funny thing to me after hearing you, Amanda, is that I actually don't know Marianne.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I know all about her. I've heard about her a million times.
Yes.
I can tell you the things that she's involved in, but I've never run
Yes.
across her personally. But just to give everybody a little bit of background, about everything civic related in Roselle she's been a part of.
She's a teacher.
So
Yeah, Medina
she's a
Park
teacher
District.
by trade, Park District, Boy Scout leader.
Flags for Roselle.
Flags for Roselle.
Green Roselle.
Rose Ambassador Scholarship. I'm
Yeah.
sure we're missing like 20 of them, right?
Well, yes.
So
Lions Club.
Oh, there you go. The obvious one, right?
And the American Legion Auxiliary.
We could probably spend the next hour continuing if
Keep
we
going.
wanted, right? But all of that to say that the choices, one, I think it's awesome that you went through a public process of choosing them, and the public has spoken, and now they can see what they've chosen. Just to give everyone a little bit of understanding. The Warholized portraits of the four Rosellians are on display at the Itasca Bank and Trust branch windows at the corner of Roselle and Irving Park Road, which is a major intersection. It's got a couple gas stations, so a lot of auto traffic. It's right across the tracks from Linford Winery, if that's how you benchmark yourself. Those who
In
are
relation
directionally
to
challenged and
Linford.
use the landmarks, we're across the tracks from Linford. But it makes for a stunning visual. And is that the kind of thing that you all see countywide? I mean, is that representative of the way this is going to look and feel across the county? Is that?
Yeah.
We think so. We hope so.
Because that's amazing.
It's
I mean, I was
amazing.
blown
Yeah.
away
Yeah.
when I walked
Yeah.
up to the bank and saw the pictures. I just was like, wow. I mean, you can't not look at those, right?
And it's
Yeah.
to be a community bank and to have members of the community, that's a direct result of how everyone's feeling about it.
Well, and we have to thank Roselle, the partnership in the town of Roselle. Our branch in Roselle is about 15 years old. The bank is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year. So we've been in Roselle for 15 years. And the strength of that relationship is how deeply we've become connected with the civic, nonprofit, and business communities in Roselle. So, our bank is physically in the middle of town, but we're sort of, kind of permeated through the conscience in Roselle, would you say?
I think that Itasca Bank, this partnership, logistically speaking, made sense because you have a great corner location. It's easy to access. We talked about the beautiful design and how it's easily visible from Roselle and Irving Park roads. But at the same time, I think there's other places that would have served this purpose.
Sure.
I think that Itasca Bank made the most sense because you guys are pillars in the community. You guys are actively engaged in Roselle. You partner with the Village. You engage local organizations in all kinds of altruistic and prosperous endeavors. And I mean, like you had mentioned, the 75th anniversary is being spent combating food insecurity in Roselle and neighboring towns. And I'm a personal big fan of your longtime relationship with the Conservation Foundation. That's another great organization that can do such good work with your collaboration and your support. And I think that that's one of the biggest draws to Itasca Bank, is that our partnership makes sense for the RACF and the Village to say, let's celebrate the contributions of these 4 Rosellians with you because of your contributions to Roselle. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that. I won't brag on our bank, but I'm more than happy to let you all do that for me. In fact, it's always better when someone else does it. I'm going to go to what I think is the obvious question that I didn't ask at the beginning, but it's the one that's been sort of in my head all along, right? Which is, why Warhol?
Why Warhol?
Yeah. I mean, there's a million artists. Why Warhol?
Well, I think the opportunity came to us through our sponsorship and our partnership with Bank of America. And so they did have a lot of that collection, and so we took advantage of that.
Okay.
So,
There had to be a reason. I just
Yeah.
didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that was it.
And I think the visual aesthetic makes all the sense in
Yeah,
the world. It's
yeah,
easy
yeah.
to show that representation, which I think is great. So, I want to kind of not lose sight of what's going on at COD, but this is such a big thing, and there's a lot of pieces. So, do us a favor, tell us a little more about what you see happening.
So, as the community engagement coordinator for the MAC, and my main focus with Warhol is getting all of the communities engaged. So it's very exciting to see everyone jumping on board, understanding the project and the scope, that this is bigger than just art on the wall. This is really bringing people into DuPage County, into their neighborhoods, and trying to wrap around the civic pride within each community as well. So I'm just excited. So for like Roselle, we have the Linford Wineries doing a label that is just stunning. It's beautiful. So please go to Linford Winery and buy this Warhol red.
You're going to twist my arm like that.
It's gorgeous. We should go after this. Let's go. And then after that, we can go to Pollyanna, because they also are doing a Warhol Pale Ale, I think it is, and they created a label for us, and it's amazing and beautiful. And like within Roselle, they're having the parade, the Rose Parade,
Yep.
and
Our Mayor's Cup is based on the best pop art float. Diana and Justin are judging.
Love it.
which
Nice.
is fantastic. And it's just great to see all of these, different businesses getting on board, and, they're promoting discounts to help their own businesses. So I just think it's really fun to see all the different things, all the around DuPage County. And Roselle is on board, let me tell you. I'm very impressed. We had no idea in, COD of the art community that Roselle has. And so it's very, very impressive.
I want to give everyone the chance to answer this question. I'm not forcing you to, so I'm not making anybody, but I want to make sure it's known that I would love all three of your opinions. Why do you think that community art projects like this one are so important these days?
Well, I just want to echo what Dawn and Amanda have said. This started out as a couple of drawings and proposing them to Diana Martinez. I'm sure they being COD and the MAC, had their ideas about what they wanted to do to market it, but it quickly became just a juggernaut in terms of not just the artwork itself. That's almost anticlimactic, art up on the wall, although the wonderful people and well-deserving, it's everything that came together. So if you've ever doubted the power of art or the power of public art, you shouldn't if you literally listen to what's going on, because the folks in Roselle, who are almost, as far away as you can get within DuPage County from COD, jumped on it immediately and said, this is important to us, and we're going to wrap our arms around it. And so when you think about the incredible artwork that's up right now, the way that you've displayed it on Itasca Bank, that's going to come down eventually. But like Amanda said, there will be the meetings and the committees and the
Yep.
people that form together around public art. And there will be things that you do that are maybe, again, with College of DuPage and Cleve Carney Museum, but more than likely just outside of that. And that's, to me, is what's important, is involving people
That's
because
well
of art.
said.
Yeah. I additionally think that it just brings the community to a higher level. It helps, the value of homes. People want to live in a place that's beautiful and has that artwork. And, I'm sure if you talk to a realtor and compare towns, it's beautiful to have more public art. And it's expression of the community as well. So I think that's really neat.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started, I was tasked to have 10 towns. And then after the invitation, more and more people just got involved. And I kept getting more calls. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can we do more? Can we do more? And, lo and behold, we have 18 towns, but we're also doing at College of DuPage, we're doing the alumni, and we're in all the centers. And so I think we counted 22 locations where all these murals are going to be. And so it's
Wow.
really throughout DuPage. And it's exciting that, we have our hand in that.
So I don't want to lose that thought. You're going to get to go next, but is there a website for everyone to get that
Yes,
information?
thank
We're going to
you.
plug it more than once,
I
but I
was
want to make sure we do it at least once. I'm not afraid of a cheap plug.
So an easy way, Warhol2023.org is the website, and go to the Facebook page, which is Warhol 2023 for the Facebook page. So it's an open page, so everybody can throw all of their Warhol items and on there, and it's just, Warhol 2023. There you go.
So what does public art mean to you in Roselle? Is that someone on the foundation?
Similarly, economic vitality, community building, expression of the community. And this isn't our first art installation. So the inaugural piece that the Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation did was the Centennial Mosaic Public Art Project.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That wasn't all that long ago.
No,
the Centennial.
no.
We had
So
a
they-
pandemic in the middle of all of that. We sort of lose track sometimes, right?
Yes. Laura and Karen came together and they had this grand vision for bringing public art to that blank space in Civic Plaza right on the wall of 8,000 Miles Restaurant. Great sushi, by the way.
I was going to say, love your sushi. Cheap plug again.
And I think that it took so once the board was founded, it took an entire year for them to complete. They partnered with Green Star Movement, which is an expert in this field of community mosaic projects. They reached out to local organizations. They hosted workshops. They contacted all the schools. And they asked the community, and this was ahead of our Centennial year, which was 2022, last year. They said, what does Roselle mean to you? What do you think of when you think of Roselle over the last 100 years? And similar to the Warhol nominations, we asked the community, what do you think of? And from all of those, and with the work of many designers and creatives that kind of melded that into this image, it resulted in the 240 square foot historic storytelling piece that you see downtown today. And it has revitalized that area. And the businesses have seen more traffic. I'm certain of it. Maybe we can't say correlation because we're all coming off of the pandemic.
Yeah, of course.
But I think without a doubt, this organization is going to continue to provide more accessibility to public art and these cultural events. And with a little bit more time, a little bit more manpower, and maybe a little bit more funding, they are going to reinvigorate Roselle. And that's what public art does.
Amen.
I love it.
I got to ask, did the three of you know much about Andy Warhol before this project came up?
And little.
I knew a little bit. I knew the soup cans, basically.
right.
And I've heard of Studio 54, but the more and more I hear, especially Diana Martinez, who's the executive director, is doing all of these lectures around DuPage. And every time I hear, there's more and more just fascinating items about him. So I think that's going to be really exciting for everybody to really learn more about Andy Warhol.
So I was at the Pittsburgh Museum with my son, who was 19, and knowing we were going to be here today, yesterday I asked him, hey, what do you remember from the Warhol Museum? Because I was curious what he's going to come back with. His responses were priceless. He goes, well, I remember he was a guest star on The Love Boat. And I'm like,
I love that show.
okay, right? And he said he was nominated for a Grammy for the cover of a vinyl rock and roll album. Does anyone know the album?
It's Lou Reed, Velvet Underground.
Velvet Underground.
Well, that's one. He got nominated for, he was one of two working on the Rolling Stones Sticky Fingers cover, which I didn't know myself at all. Yeah. And the third one, which I did know this, but I'd kind of forgotten about it, there's the legendary story about Andy Warhol getting shot and surviving an assassination attempt. What you learn in the museum is that Andy, from that point on in life, wore a corset for the entire rest of his life to keep his internal organs from moving around.
Wow.
He barely survived that attempt. I mean, that would have changed American art history had he not survived that attempt. I mean, it's so his artwork is one thing, but as a sort of piece of pop culture or a person of pop culture, I think that makes him a little more relevant to people of the next generation. Like, I'm old enough to remember him when he was around, but that next generation, are they always going to remember Campbell soup cans? So apparently they're going to remember The Love Boat and Sticky Fingers.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm not afraid of a cheap plug, and I do this every time we're in here. I would love if all of you would share social media or websites that people can go to. Give us that Warhol website and Facebook again, please.
So the Warhol website would be warhol2023.org, which is the same as the Facebook page. And I do have to do a mention and a call out and a thank
Please
you.
do.
The JCS fund from the DuPage Foundation is supporting this whole pop art exhibit. And so we really, really thank them.
And we love
for
Mike
doing
Citric
that.
and his crew over at the
Yes.
DuPage Foundation.
Yeah. So thank you to all of them and to the JCS fund.
Yeah.
Jeff, don't be shy.
Well,
Clearly you've been holding back.
I have been. I actually have an Instagram account with my name is Geoff Bev, so that's GeoffBev, so that you can find me on Instagram. And very soon I will have a lot more pictures up. I've been waiting. The only ones that I posted, I think, are of the Glen Ellen original 4, but did not want to steal the thunder or talk about anything. But it's wonderful. So some of my Frida Kahlo work is up there, and if you follow me, you'll be able to see some upcoming murals that I'm going to be finishing over the summer.
Amanda, is there a Roselle-related site you can share?
The Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation is roselleartsculture.org, and their handle is the same on all social sites, Roselle Arts Culture.
Beautiful. So before we go, does anyone have anything they want to share while we're here? I always, at the end, give my guests the opportunity to fire back.
There's one more thing with
Please.
Roselle. So on the Warhol 2023 page, there is an event section. So if you go into the events, we'll have all of the towns, all 20 of them listed, and Roselle will be on there. So once you hit the Roselle button, you will be able to see their specific artwork, their bios, along with all the activities going on within Roselle as well. So definitely check the events page for warhol2023.org.
I mean, I just want to take a moment to thank everybody because this, I'll call it a campaign. It was put together so nicely. I know I told you this via email, but it was just so well orchestrated amongst all these different communities. I love Warhol Wednesday, like the Frida Fridays. And your work was so lovely. Like, I think you look at the Marilyn Monroe and it's like, oh, that's Warholized. And it's not mocking. It's still fun. It's bright. She's still beautiful. And like, I think that's what you did for all of our Rosellians, which I really appreciate. And being able to work with you guys and partner together to have the best spot in our town to showcase.
Jeff, we were getting, oh my God, this is amazing, before they were even fully installed on the homes. I mean, that was happening real time. So I echo that. That's
great.
It's been great. I can't imagine this undertaking has to be massive. I mean, it couldn't have been easy. We have a little saying we joke about in Roselle at the bank. We say it can't always be Linford wine and roses. So I know there were some difficulties, I'm sure, along the way. But kudos to everyone involved who, helped overcome that to make this thing real. And what an exciting summer and fall we're going to have now.
Yes, so fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you all enough for being here, Jeff, Amanda, Dawn. Thank you for joining me. With that, we will close up. I'm Scott LaMorte. This is the Itasca Bank and Trust Insights Podcast. Thank you for allowing me 15 minutes of fame with this crew.